Good morning, Fit Church. Welcome to another devotion. And obviously, we finished up our series on getting through the chaos yesterday. So we're going to be continuing doing some one-off devotions. We'll be looking at starting a new series in the next week and a half or so. But today's devotion, today we're going to be in the book of Joshua. We're looking at the story of Caleb. And as many of you know, today my dad had an appointment with his doctor, and so we'll be filling in people, I believe, during the hangout is when we're going to look to actually be letting people know, hey, here's more of what's really going on and kind of where we're at. Nuts and bolts of it, we didn't get a whole lot more today. They didn't find what we thought they might find. That's a blessing and a curse. Blessing is, it's not some of the horrific diagnoses that we anticipated. And I say horrific, it's not some of the ones that would be completely life-altering. The bad news is, we're not really any closer to knowing what it actually is. All we've done is rule out a couple of things. So, all that being said, it's had me thinking today about age. And about the will to do what God has told us to do versus the strength, the body, to do what God has told us to do. And I think it's quite interesting when we look at the story of Caleb, because I think Caleb was blessed with both the will and the strength. But I also recognize I think his faith really carried him. We're going to be looking at that today. Joshua chapter 14, verses 10 through 12. Just a brief, so you understand what's happening. Joshua is the leader of the Israelites. They've left Egypt. They have spent 40 years in the wilderness, and they have now begun their campaign to conquer the promised land that God has given them. That's where we find this, is that they're in the middle of that campaign. And so we catch up with David here. Caleb is having a conversation with Joshua here. Caleb's speaking. Now, as you can see, the Lord has kept me alive, and well as he promised for all these 45 years since Moses made this promise, even while Israel wandered in the wilderness. Today, I am 85 years old. I am as strong now as I was when Moses sent me on that journey. The journey he's referring to here is he was one of 12 scouts sent into the promised land by Moses to advise on what the campaign and how difficult the process would be to take the promised land from those who had settled within it. 10 of those 12 came back and said, it's too hard, we can't do this. 2 said that it was possible, Joshua and Caleb. Caleb was the oldest, and Caleb was told that he would see the promised land, and God kept that promise because Caleb kept that faith. So, I'm as strong now as I was when Moses sent me on that journey, and I can still travel and fight as well as I could then. So give me the hill country that the Lord promised me. You remember that as scouts we found the descendants of Anak living there in great walled towns. If the Lord is with me, I will drive them out of the land, just as the Lord said. A few things here. When he was young and he was a scout, he went into that land and he saw enemies, strong enemies in fortifications, in cities that had walls, in cities that were built to defend against invaders. Caleb was sent in with the goal of anticipating the difficulty of the campaign to take this territory. And when Caleb returned and gave his report to Moses and the other scouts, he said, yeah, it's going to be tough, but we've got it. The Lord's with us. Now, with all of the bleating, not bleeding, but bleating, with all of the bleating from the other scouts who did not have faith, God saw fit to not reward this generation with the promised land. Thus they wandered. 45 years took place in between when Moses sent Caleb to be a scout the first time and when they actually were in the promised land in the campaign to take it. 45 years. And Caleb, he didn't doubt. If the Lord is with me, I will drive them out. 85 years old. But he knows that God promised. And he knows that God fulfills promises. When I look at my dad and I see the struggle that he's in right now, I don't believe it's a struggle of faith. I believe it is a struggle of the ramifications of the life that he's lived. And some of it's just how life is. Some of it may be consequences from his obesity from the majority of his life. We don't know at this point. I think it's a little bit of a cop-out to say, because you're fat, you're dealing with stuff. I'm not saying that that's what's going on here. But I definitely recognize that there could be consequences. That being said, my dad's 58. And he's not done yet. And he's not anywhere near done yet. And when I look into the individuals that are a part of our family at Fit Church, I look at name after name after name, and I see people who are not done yet. But we have to ask ourselves the question, are we going to be this bold? Are we going to be Caleb bold? Are we going to walk up to our leader and say, this has been in my heart since it was spoken into me by God himself. And I've never let go and I won't let go. Is it mine yet? Or are we going to wait? Kick around the dirt. Wonder if it ever happens. Wonder if it's ever going to be our turn. God has a purpose for each and every one of us. And those purposes are wildly different. Some of you look at even the devotions that we do, and you're like, I can't do this. This is not me. That's okay. Some of us, this is where we should be communicating and relating and connecting. That's my heart. But some of us, our heart is to be teachers to kids. Some of us, our heart is to befriend those who believe that we're the oppressor and we're the evil and we're the scum. Some of us, it's to raise our children and to instill in them an acknowledgement of who God is and what God's calling them to be and do. I'm not here to tell you what your calling has to be. I'm here to tell you that God's not finished with you and your calling. So today I'm challenging all of us, myself included. Are we being bold like Caleb was bold? Regardless of our age. Regardless of the atrocities we've now watched. Regardless of how long we've had to wait. Are we willing to be bold? Are we willing to have faith? Because that is what God is calling us to today. God bless you guys. Pray you have a fantastic Tuesday, and I will see you for more devotions later this week.